In a remote village nestled deep in the African savannah, there lived a boy named Kofi. Kofi was no ordinary child. From the moment he could walk, his eyes would drift toward the sky. He would spend hours watching birds glide effortlessly through the air, their wings stretched wide, soaring higher and higher. While other children played games, Kofi dreamed of flying like the birds. A dream in the dirt. Kofi lived in a small village where technology was scarce and resources even scarcer. Most families lived simple lives, relying on farming and small trades. His own family struggled to make ends meet, and they couldn't afford to send Kofi to a big city school. Yet Kofi was curious. He was always tinkering with discarded items, bits of wire, scrap metal, and old wheels he found in the village dump. Despite his deep fascination with flight, everyone around him thought it was just a silly dream. His friends laughed at him, and even his family doubted he could ever build something as impossible as a plane. "You should focus on farming or fishing," they would say. "No one from this village can fly, Kofi. It's impossible." But Kofi didn't give up. In his heart, he knew that one day he would prove them wrong. He spent days sketching in the dirt, designing flying machines using nothing but sticks and imagination. The sky continued to call him, and he couldn't ignore it. The first attempts. One day, Kofi heard stories from travelers who passed through his village about large flying birds, metal birds, soaring across the skies in big cities far away. They spoke of airplanes, great machines that carried people from one side of the world to the other. This only fueled Kofi's desire to fly even more. But how could a boy with no tools, no access to technology, and no formal education possibly build something as complicated as an airplane? Kofi had a plan. He began by scavenging the village and nearby towns for anything he could use. Old bicycle parts, scrap metal, wooden planks, nothing was off limits. He worked in secret, building small models first, testing different designs, and trying to understand the mechanics of flight by observing the birds. He studied their wings, how they flapped and glided, and tried to recreate the movement using materials he found. His first few attempts were rough. Wooden frames with canvas wings barely got off the ground. They would wobble, fall, and break apart. Villagers mocked him. Kofi and his flying fantasies, they laughed, but with every failure, Kofi grew more determined. He learned from his mistakes, rebuilding and improving his designs. The breakthrough months passed, and Kofi's obsession grew. His hands were rough from building, and his eyes burned from long nights of thinking. But he wouldn't quit. He fashioned a new design using a mix of bamboo sticks and old metal parts. His biggest breakthrough came when he realized that birds didn't just flap their wings, they caught the wind. He needed a way to harness the wind's power too. Kofi began experimenting with makeshift propellers. Using the wheel of an old bicycle, he fashioned a crude propeller and attached it to his new creation. He added pedals from the bike so he could manually power the propeller, using his legs to create thrust. The villagers shook their heads. They had seen Kofi fail too many times, but Kofi wasn't listening to them anymore. The day of flight. Finally, the day came. Kofi had finished his masterpiece. The contraption looked nothing like a real airplane. It was a hodgepodge of scrap materials held together by hope and determination. But Kofi was confident. He carried his machine to a nearby hilltop, the highest point in the village, where the wind was strongest. Some villagers followed, curious to see what would happen this time. Most expected another crash, another failure. But Kofi had a feeling in his gut. This time would be different. He strapped himself into the seat, placed his feet on the pedals, and took a deep breath. The crowd was silent, some shaking their heads, others whispering. Kofi began pedaling furiously, and the propeller started to turn. The wind caught the wings, and for a brief moment, nothing happened. But then, slowly, the contraption began to move forward, picking up speed as it rolled down the hill, faster and faster. And just as it reached the edge of the cliff, something miraculous happened. The plane lifted off the ground. Gasps filled the air. Kofi's plane wobbled at first, but then, with the wind beneath its wings, it steadied. For a few moments, Kofi was flying. He was soaring like the birds he had watched his entire life. The impossible had happened. From dreamer to legend, the villagers were stunned. Kofi, the boy they had doubted, had built a flying machine from scratch. The news of his flight spread far and wide. Visitors from neighboring towns came to see the boy who had flown. And even people from the cities heard about the village boy who defied gravity. In time, Kofi's story reached engineers and inventors in big cities, and he was invited to showcase his creation. Though crude, his invention inspired others, and soon Kofi was given opportunities to study aviation and engineering. He went on to work with top engineers, but eventually designing real airplanes, taking his dream to new heights. The boy who once sketched planes in the dirt of his village became a renowned inventor, his story of perseverance and determination known across the world. Kofi taught everyone a valuable lesson. No matter where you come from, no matter how impossible your dreams may seem, if you believe in yourself and never give up, the sky's the limit. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the story of Kofi and his incredible journey. If you love stories of inspiration, invention, and resilience like this one, make sure to hit that subscribe button. I've got many more exciting stories coming your way.